The Hubble Space Telescope has a new problem, and this one doesn't have an easy fix. A new study shows that satellites are appearing as streaks within Hubble's images, and the issue is just getting worse. What's more, SpaceX is getting blamed for the problem because of their Starlink satellites, but the issue is more complicated than it seems. Let's dive into this contentious problem. Starlink is SpaceX's constellation of satellites that provide satellite internet. In order to provide reliable, low-latency internet, the satellites have to be in low Earth orbit, and there have to be a lot of them. According to astronomer Jonathan McDowell, as of February 2023, half of all active satellites in orbit were SpaceX's Starlink. As of that time, there were 3,660 Starlink satellites of 7,300 total active satellites. And the numbers are just going to increase. SpaceX is putting more Starlink satellites into orbit every week. They've requested authorization to put up to 42,000 satellites into orbit. It's easy to point a finger at SpaceX, but it's important to note they're not the only ones. OneWeb, Iridium, Amazon's Project Kuiper. These are just a few of the companies currently or aiming to put satellite internet constellations into the sky. It's becoming more of a problem. We've known about the effect of these small satellites on ground-based astronomy for a while now. In order to study distant parts of our night sky, telescopes take long exposures. When satellites move across these fields of view, they create streaks in the images. Starlink satellites are very reflective, which is why they are disproportionately disruptive to ground-based astronomy. It's important to note that SpaceX has been working with astronomers to reduce the light pollution that their satellites cause. Their fixes have included a visor on early generation satellites to absorb light, and more recently, dielectric mirrors to scatter light away from the Earth. These have had varying degrees of success, and it's still a work in progress. A lot of critics, including SpaceX's CEO, have just told astronomers to use Space-Based Telescope to avoid the Starlink problem, as if that's an easy option. Spoiler alert, it's not. But now, a study in Nature Astronomy reveals that increasing numbers of satellites pose an issue for space-based observatories like Hubble as well. Hubble was launched in 1990, and it's currently at an orbit of about 335 miles above the Earth's surface. Periodic surfacing missions from the Space Shuttle astronauts boosted its orbit to counteract the drag from Earth's atmosphere, but its last boost was in 2009. That means Hubble's orbit is decaying. Its observations are now more vulnerable to objects in a higher orbit than it is like Starlink. These satellites orbit about 10 miles higher than Hubble. Eventually, we may target higher orbits for these kinds of observatories, but there's not much we can really do for the ones that are currently being affected by satellites like Starlink. In this study, a research team studied Hubble's images and found that from 2009 to 2020, the chances of seeing a satellite in one of Hubble's images was 3.7%. That might sound small, but the problem is getting worse. That number increased to 5.9% in 2021, and it's just going to get more serious from here. It's also important to note that there may be a private mission to boost Hubble's orbit in the future. In December, NASA announced that it was studying utilizing the Polaris program, a series of private space missions funded by Jarek Isaacman, to boost Hubble's orbit. We're not sure this will actually happen, and even if it does, that doesn't solve the satellite problem overall. And it won't help other observatories in the works, like the Chinese Survey Space Telescope, which can't launch into a higher orbit because it needs to share an orbit with China's Tiangong space station so taikonauts, or Chinese astronauts, can service the observatory. As the number of satellites in orbit increases, this is going to become a bigger issue. By the 2030s, experts think there might be 75,000 to 100,000 satellites in orbit. But it's also important to note that affordable satellite internet is, in and of itself, a good thing. The issue is complicated, and it might be easy to point a finger at SpaceX, but they're just the first ones doing this. There are many, many more satellite megaconstellations on the horizon, and we need to figure out better regulation before this gets worse.